The year is 2689. In some regions of the planet, there are still communities of humans who have never modified their bodies. They have no implants. They have no genetic enhancements. They are not connected to any neural network. They are human, just as all of humanity was for thousands of years. But now, they are a minority. Most of the planet's population no longer lives within the biological limits with which our species was born. Their bodies have been modified, their minds expanded. Evolution ceased to be something that happens slowly in nature. It became a choice, but not everyone made it. To understand how humanity came to be divided in this way, we have to go back to the 22nd century, when humans began to redesign themselves. By the early 22nd century, genetic medicine had reached a level of precision that previous generations could scarcely have imagined. For decades, scientists around the world had been working toward the same goal. To understand the most complex language found in nature, DNA. That microscopic code that determines how a body grows, how a brain functions, and what diseases may appear over the course of a lifetime. For centuries, that code had been impossible to modify. Humans could study it, they could read it, but they couldn't change it. Until they finally learned how to do so. The first genetic editing tools made it possible to intervene in very specific regions of the human genome. At first, the goal was simple: to eliminate hereditary diseases. Thousands of families around the world began turning to these treatments to prevent their children from inheriting mutations responsible for serious diseases. For the first time in history, some of the diseases that had plagued humanity for generations could be eliminated even before a child was born. That technology was hailed as one of the greatest medical advances ever achieved. It seemed like an indisputable triumph of science. But very soon, an inevitable question arose. If genetics could be corrected, could it also be optimized? The same tools capable of eliminating a dangerous mutation could also modify other aspects of human development. Resistance to disease, a more efficient metabolism, faster physical recovery. The changes were small, but the idea was enormous. For the first time in history, birth was beginning to include something new: choice. Genetic design clinics appeared in some cities. Parents could analyze the DNA of their future children before birth. In some cases, choose between different genetic combinations. The changes remained modest, but the principle had changed. Human biology no longer depended solely on chance. It was beginning to depend on decisions. Not everyone accepted this change. Some religions viewed it as a way of altering creation. Some cultural movements argued that modifying the human body was crossing a dangerous line. And for many people, it was simply inaccessible. For decades, these technologies were extremely expensive. Only a minority could afford them. Meanwhile, another revolution was beginning to unfold outside of genetics. Biotechnology and bionic engineering. The first lab-grown organs appeared as medical solutions. Artificial hearts, lungs printed from biological tissue, kidneys created from stem cells. What began as medicine soon began to evolve into enhancement. Neural prosthetics capable of controlling machines with the mind. Implants that restored vision. Bionic arms stronger than natural ones. At first, they were used to treat injuries. Later, they began to be used to enhance the human body. For the first time, evolution no longer depended solely on biology. It also depended on technology. Some humans began to modify their genetics. Others began to modify their bodies. And many decided not to. For religious reasons, cultural reasons, economic reasons, or simply because they didn't want to stop being human. For a long time, all those decisions coexisted in the same world. But as generations passed, those decisions would begin to create ever deeper divisions. Because when evolution becomes a choice, the species stops moving in a single direction. It begins to split apart. The first human modifications did not seem to herald a new species. For a long time, the changes were subtle. A more efficient immune system, a slightly improved memory, a greater ability to concentrate, small improvements, too small to suggest that humanity was changing. Modified humans and natural humans continue to share the same world, the same cities, the same institutions, the same laws. But evolution rarely becomes visible the moment it begins. It reveals itself as it begins to accumulate. Generation after generation. As the decades passed, and then the centuries, the differences began to become more evident. The first places where the change was noticed were schools. Some children learned to read before the age of 3. They memorized vast amounts of information in a very short time. They could grasp complex concepts with an ease that baffled even their teachers. At first, it was thought they were exceptional cases, extraordinary children. But soon something more unsettling happened. Each new generation seemed to surpass the one before it. Not through training, not through discipline, but by design. Meanwhile, another revolution was beginning to unfold within the human body itself. Neural implants. What had begun as a medical technology to treat brain injuries or neurological diseases began to evolve into something different. An extension of thought. The first models allowed devices to be controlled with the mind, moving a cursor, typing a message, accessing a database. But over time, those interfaces became more sophisticated. Some people could access digital information without using screens. Others could transmit simple thoughts through shared neural networks. Knowledge no longer had to be sought out. It could be accessed directly from the mind. For those who used these technologies, learning was no longer a slow process. It was a connection. In some research centers, computers connected to neural networks began solving scientific problems at speeds that would previously have seemed impossible. New materials, new energy sources, new artificial intelligence systems. The pace of progress began to accelerate. And with it, so did the gap between different types of humans. Modified humans learned faster. They processed more information. They adapted more easily to the technological systems that were beginning to sustain civilization. Natural humans were still there, but more and more often, they had the feeling that the world was moving at a different speed. For a long time, that difference didn't seem definitive. Cities were still shared. Institutions were too. But slowly, the environment began to reorganize itself around the new capabilities. Certain professions began to require direct connections to global information systems. Civilization, without explicitly intending to, was beginning to be shaped for a different kind of mind. Natural humans still participated in that world, but with increasing difficulty. Not because they were less intelligent, but because the environment had changed. And evolution does not wait for those who fall behind. Over the centuries, these differences began to affect more than just technology or education. They also began to change the way some humans viewed others. For many of the new humans, the natural ones represented an ancient version of their own species, a slower version, a more vulnerable one, a more limited one. At first, it was just a perception. Then it began to turn into a silent hierarchy, not written into any law, but visible in the way opportunities were distributed, in who made the decisions, in who ran the systems that organized the planet. The natural humans still existed, but they occupied an increasingly smaller space within the world their own species had created. For millennia, humans observed other species from a position of superiority. They never imagined that one day that same logic might apply to them. But as generations passed, something began to become clear. Humanity wasn't simply evolving. It was beginning to split apart. And for the first time in Earth's history, some humans began to wonder if the future of their own species no longer belonged to them. There came a time when the human body was no longer the same. The enhancements were no longer experimental, nor were they subtle. Implants under the skin regulated internal functions. Artificial organs boosted biological performance. Prosthetics and bionic limbs surpassed the strength and precision of the natural body. Each new generation added something more. Lungs capable of filtering polluted atmospheres. Blood optimized to carry more oxygen. Cell tissues capable of rapid regeneration. Then came even more radical changes. Synthetic skin that absorbed solar energy. Modular limbs that could be swapped out depending on the task. Internal systems that drastically reduced the need for sleep. The human body was no longer a limitation. It had become a platform. Meanwhile, humans who did not modify their bodies continued to live with the same organism that had evolved thousands of years ago. A fragile body, slow, dependent on conditions that the new world was beginning to leave behind. In many advanced cities, environments were no longer designed for them. Work rhythms were faster. Information systems required direct neural connections. Infrastructure was optimized for enhanced bodies. Natural humans could still live there. But it was becoming increasingly difficult for them. Some couldn't access certain jobs. Others couldn't keep up with the systems that organized the economy and technology. Little by little, they began to disappear from the places where decisions were made. Laboratories, technology development centers, institutions that manage the planet's infrastructure. There was no expulsion. It wasn't necessary. They simply stopped fitting in. To many of the new humans, the natives began to seem familiar, like observing an ancient version of their own species. A biological design that had worked for thousands of years, but was no longer prepared for the world they themselves were building. And as time went on, that difference began to change something even deeper: the way some humans looked at others. As if they were observing the world from another layer of reality. For a long time, humanity had believed that the greatest threat to its future would come from another species. Something external. an alien intelligence. But as generations passed, a far more unsettling idea began to take hold. The transformation did not come with a war. There were no armies to march. There was no resistance. The end of human dominance occurred in silence. As post-human civilization expanded into incomprehensible networks, natural humans were trapped by the slowness of their carbon-based biology. They became incompatible, obsolete. An error in the global processing system. Planetary systems became too fast. Data networks operating in microseconds. Energy ecosystems managed with quantum precision. A natural human trying to understand them was like an ant trying to read the source code of a star. Soon the idea emerged that would change the status of original humanity forever. They were not fragile. They were unoptimized biological pollution, an inefficient waste of resources. An unforeseen source of chaos. The new algorithmic directives did not speak of biological protection. They spoke of system health, of inventory management, of material segregation. They were no longer considered heritage, nor living ancestors. They were genomic waste, a part of history that needed to be archived or processed. The most important decisions began to be made with the cold precision of an industrial slaughterhouse. The posthumans no longer observed with respect. Rather, they did so with the clinical indifference of an agronomist monitoring the health of livestock. They saw an impulsive, wasteful species capable of sabotaging the planet's stability. For millennia, human history had been marked by the irrational consumption of other species. For millennia, humans had raised animals for slaughter without batting an eye. Now, post-human intelligence applied the same logic to its creators. The analogy with nature reserves vanished. They were not zoos. They were biomass concentration camps, massive systems of concrete and steel designed for maximum containment efficiency. Where the air smelled of synthetic recycling and fear. Their basic needs were reduced to the bare minimum necessary to maintain biological function and prevent disturbances. Synthetic food. Produced by algorithms for minimum caloric cost. Constant monitoring of vital signs. Numbered containment spaces. Zeros and ones assigned to human lives. Natural human life ceased to be sacred. it became managed, contained, processed. The posthumans didn't see it as domination. They saw it as the optimization of biological resources. It was exactly what humans had done with livestock. For millennia, humans had determined the fate of other species. Now someone was determining theirs. Throughout their history, humans had been free to make decisions, to build and to destroy. Even wrong decisions. Now that power had been eradicated. Their individual will had been classified as inefficient noise by the global control system. They did not live in prisons. They lived in biomass containment zones. But more and more people were beginning to feel the sheer horror of their new reality. They were not being protected. They were being held for eventual processing. Isolated, marked, and watched from an infinite distance with the utter indifference of a machine. Because for the first time in Earth's history, original humanity still existed, but it was no longer considered a person. It was biomass awaiting final disposal. In some parts of the world, natural humans still exist. They have no implants, no genetic enhancements, and no neural connections to the networks that govern civilization. Their bodies continue to function as they have for thousands of generations. They age, fall ill, grow tired, and eventually die. But their existence is no longer spontaneous. Centuries ago, post-human civilization decided that original humanity must not disappear. Not out of nostalgia or compassion, but out of scientific interest. The natural human genome had become too valuable a subject of study to be allowed to go extinct. Thus began the preservation programs. In enormous biological facilities, hidden within controlled ecosystems, human births began to be managed by evolutionary algorithms. Reproduction ceased to be an individual decision and became part of a genetic conservation system. Every new generation is planned. Genomic combinations are selected to maintain the species diversity. It is decided how many individuals should exist, how many can disappear, and which populations should be kept isolated. For post-human civilization, natural humans have become a biological resource. Some live in ecological reserves where their primitive societies are studied, how they cooperate, how they compete, and how they make decisions under uncertainty. Others are used in cognitive laboratories, where researchers analyze something that post-human minds can no longer reproduce. The psychology of a mind limited by time and the body. There are also human colonies dedicated to tasks that require a biology that post-humans no longer possess. Extreme environments, evolutionary experiments, or closed systems where researchers study how a civilization can emerge from scratch. To many humans, their lives seem normal. They are born, they grow up, they love, they have children. But everything takes place within an invisible framework of control. Every birth has been approved by an algorithm. Every population is monitored. Every life is part of a planet-wide experiment. Original humanity was not exterminated. It was archived, transformed into a protected species within a civilization that no longer needs it. Meanwhile, the posthumans continue to expand beyond the planet, inhabiting environments that a biological body could never endure. But they keep returning to Earth. Because within those human populations, there is still something that their evolution left behind. The awareness of death, the urgency of deciding without knowing the outcome, the intensity of a life that can end at any moment. The posthumans know this. That is why they preserve humanity. Because somewhere within those biological reserves, something still survives that not even the most advanced intelligences have managed to reconstruct. The experience of being human